So thank you everybody for joining us for this week's Thursday 30 with Michael Bond, who's founder and CEO of the Spoken app. Michael's going to walk us through the app and tell us how it's helped people to regain their voice. If you have a question for Michael, could you please type it into the chat and we'll have a time for discussion at the end of the session. So thank you, and over to you, Michael.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen here quickly. And I believe folks can see that. As Annabelle said, I'm Michael Bond. I'm the founder of Spoken, and I'm going to share a little bit about my story and what brought us here and what our app can do and how it might be able to help you. A few years ago, my grandmother suffered a stroke. She woke up in a hospital bed, her mind intact, but completely unable to speak. When the nurses came, they handed her what we've been giving patients for the last 50 years, a sheet with pictures that she could point at for food, toilet, pain. She was the same woman she'd been that morning, educated and opinionated, but now her entire world had collapsed down to a few words on a piece of paper. While we sat in the waiting room, everyone agreed that the next step was clear. She loved her iPad, so we just needed an app to help her communicate. But what we found was terrible. Amateur efforts with unusable interfaces, non-English options were even worse. Instead of taking advantage of new technology, they were simply digital versions of that same sheet of paper. It turns out we weren't alone. From nonverbal autism to aphasia, Parkinson's, and ALS, millions need help speaking in the US alone. But high cost, lack of access, and bad product fit make alternative and augmentative communication a billion-dollar market that barely serves a tenth of those who need it. Speech disorders can give you a tip of the tongue feeling, like a severe stutter. The next word is in your head, it's obvious, but you just can't get it out. Where Spoken, we started with an idea that you could predict that next word by taking the next, there we go, that you could predict the next word by taking the AI that powers models like ChatGPT and applying it to real human conversations. Using large language models, we could learn from how people talked, giving suggestions that fit the world and improve over time. We could train neural models with hundreds of hours of speech, creating voices that were lifelike and natural instead of robotic. Well, I'm excited to tell you today that it worked. We built that system, we put it in front of users, and they loved it. They went from food and toilet to real sentences with full vocabularies about feelings, hopes, memories. They love that it remembers names and empowers them to live bigger, more meaningful lives. We brought this new approach straight to consumers in the App Store and have seen it quickly adopted by users looking to communicate deeper, richer, and quicker. We were aiming to beat those other apps, but what surprised us is that it also outperformed medical grade systems costing thousands. Even more exciting is that it's been adopted for use cases way beyond what we planned for. Over half of our new users are autistic and nonverbal to some extent. Some rely on the app to speak at all, while others only need in certain situations. It's a great fit because so many of them can read and write and feel limited by AAC apps that are at the level of a child or what they've been given for earlier in school. It's all thanks to a team that blends academic knowledge with real experience. We were one of the first commercial products to ship using GPT and have already been awarded a couple of patents for our work here. I spent nearly 2 decades working in design and tech and have launched apps for 3 different startups, but nothing has been more exciting than the progress we've made. We've had over 100,000 people download the app. I keep having to update that slide as we're adding over 1,000 new users every week, giving us great feedback for improvements. The app is free to use with an optional monthly subscription that unlocks premium features. But when we started bringing Spoken to hospitals, we didn't just see the better patient outcomes that we've been hearing from customers. We also saw added value for their clinicians as well. Our technology was a perfect fit for people with a temporary loss of speech, such as those recovering from surgery or on a ventilator, and giving doctors and nurses the ability to have real conversations with people who couldn't speak. It ended up saving time and improving communication for everyone, not just the patient. And obviously, we've seen that same thing happen again in schools as it's been adopted, where it's helped with teachers being able to communicate with students and giving especially older students with more vocabulary and a wider range to be able to participate in class deeper. It's much easier to talk about Romeo and Juliet when you can say star-crossed lovers rather than, play and good. We'll talk a little bit about some of the ideas that we brought in that distinguish us from other AAC as well. And these are all things that we've developed based on either academic research or just user feedback of what people want in classrooms or hospital settings. First, what's interested in is contextual predictions. Not only are we predicting next words based on what people have said in the past, the way that they speak, and what they are likely to say next, but we can also detect things such as location. So if the user is in a restaurant, we can suggest that when they say, that they can say hamburger. Whereas if they're in a hospital, can I have a doctor or something like that? We can use that kind of context to give better predictions that are more likely to be what the user wants to say. This becomes really important as we are trying to keep people up to a conversational level of speech where they can speak quickly, they can be a part of real life conversations rather than having people wait for them to type or slow things down. What we hear most from users is that anything that allows them to speak at more words per minute brings them closer to a richer and deeper experience of conversation. For some users who are struggling with speech at a more grammar or other level, we have also included drawing or writing recognition. So if they are having trouble using the keyboard or even having trouble putting together letters to words, we can give predictions based on what they are drawing or writing. So if we find this in aphasia patients a lot where they get stuck on a word, but they might still be able to describe it in other ways other than speech. It might be easier to draw a house than to say a house. And so by giving people different input methods and using prediction based on that, we can open up different ways of communication. One that we found, especially in classrooms, is that alternative communication goes far beyond speech, that a lot of times users feel out of step with what is happening in the classroom where they're having to wait, that they are not able to um, be a part of conversations fully or be on the same kind of wavelength or timing as the teacher or the rest of the class. So we've built in a attention button that flashes their device that can get the attention of what's happening in the room of saying, hey, I'm about to speak, or give me time to prepare what I'm about to say. Having something simple like that really helps out in day-to-day use where they're not feeling like the conversation or is taking off without them, that they can be a part of things and that people can know that they need to wait a second for someone to say something or that it's time for someone else to speak. So that is spoken. We started out trying to solve the most pressing problem and most essential need of a single person with some curiosity about the technology needed to make that happen. And while our first beta tester is gone, we're still building a legacy that's grown from dozens to hundreds and now thousands of people helped. Look forward to any of your questions and talk about this some more. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. It sounds really interesting. I like your drawing recognition feature. That's kind of different from like ones that I've seen. Like, for example, Gimple is like quite a new app that we've been looking at, and I don't think that drawing is a feature of them. I've never heard of that before. It's quite interesting. And also the attention button is really handy.
Yeah, those are two that I don't think anybody else is using right now that we've had some really good response from.
Does anyone have any questions for Michael? Angie?
Yeah, there's 2 questions. Do you have child voices within
Yes.
it? Yeah, some apps don't do that again, so that's really good to know.
It's been so wonderful. There's so much AI talk and things like that. But one of the things that's been so great here in the past few years is speech synthesis, getting to the point that it's no longer robots and it's no longer just American accent. Also, that we can have both child voices and giving people voices that more represent their accents. That's been something that people have responded great to, and if you haven't looked at AAC in the past few years, I would like to say we're the only ones doing it, but it's become much more popular, much more useful to be able to do child voices and more accents and voices that represent people better.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And then the other thing was, I might have missed this, but how much can you personalize on it? I know you talked about location and obviously contextual predictions, but what can you personalize?
So we can personalize in a couple of different ways. One, it's learning from everything you say. If you are constantly having a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for lunch every day, at a certain point, it's going to know that you say, I want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It's going to know just based on your usage. If there are specific things that you want to talk about, we sort of offer an onboarding as well that covers a lot of what people want to talk about, like family members' names, just to know that, hey, they are going to talk about Janie a lot because that's their sister, or their pets' names even, or addresses and things like that. We have a very simple onboarding quiz that takes those things and puts those into the mix from day one. In schools, especially with children, especially with autistic children, there's some very targeted interests. So we also allow people to simply add words into the mix directly. For teachers, sometimes they're like, I'm sorry, but we need to talk about Pokemon. I need to add in the names of at least 5 or 6 Pokemon. This is the most important thing that we can talk about right now. So let's add those in directly. So we offer, even though we're not as structured as some more board-based AAC, we're offering multiple methods of adding more words in there for personalization.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
I believe you're muted, Annabelle. It's still muted.
Sorry.
Oh, no problem.
I was just saying, does anybody else have a question for Michael while we have him on the line?
I have a question. So I've been using this app with one of my students, and when you say we can like personalize it and add context to it, is there like a section I'm supposed to go in under the app to do that, or is it just as time goes on?
Both. I would say both as time goes on, it will learn, but there's also under the settings, I believe it's called personalization quiz or personalize, and that will sort of lead you through it's a one-by-one kind of a quiz of like, hey, what are your family members' names? What are things that you enjoy? Are you someone who do you go to school, pets' names, that sort of thing. There's also a section called add words where it would be like for those specific sort of words, like my Pokemon example.
Okay.
And those are both under the settings.
And you can save phrases too, I believe, right?
Yes.
Is there a limit?
No.
Okay. And then that question or the questionnaire you talked about, was that like, it was like 12 questions, right? It was really quick and simple, easy.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Mostly
That's-
for trying to get, sometimes where a lot of these things fail at is proper nouns of, where we can predict a lot of different things, but it really helps to know that they live in London, or because that's going to come up a lot, or what street they live on, or things like that. It's a lot for getting those very specific things that won't come up naturally.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I keep muting myself. Actually, I'm sorry. I didn't catch the name of the lady who has joined us from Ohio.
Oh, yeah.
Can I just ask, how old is the child that you're, or are you using it with more than one child, or?
No, I'm using it with one. She's 13 years old, and she has brain tumors that keep moving around. So it's acting like aphasia. And I'm a speech language pathologist from California, by the way. And so a nurse at Chalk Hospital kind of recommended this app to her mom when we found like nothing else was really working for her. She was really frustrated because she's all there cognitively. It's kind of like how you described your grandma. It's just like because of the muscle strength and her weak voice, she has a hard time communicating. But once we found this app, she's been using it fairly quickly. I attached a keyboard on for her, so I know you have like that word predictability, but she's kind of just been typing it and finding it a little bit quicker than using the iPad. And it's been working. I guess I just wanted to know, like, I didn't find much information on trainings or anything, so that's how I found this what we're on today.
Session.
Wonderful. And I will say that we're a small company, but still, like, if you have any questions or things, just very much feel free to reach out. Tim, who will be behind me, will
Yes,
answer your questions. If not, me.
I've definitely emailed with him back and forth a few times
Okay,
already, so
there
I
you
know
go.
it's such a quick response.
So our customer support staff. We're a
Yes.
small, comfortable company, but we
Yeah.
See what's happening with the referrals or
Does anyone else have any questions for Michael? I think everybody, it's very quiet this afternoon, Michael, but
no
it
problem.
sounds really good, and I'm sure that our teach team will, and our speech and language therapists as well, who are all out and about this afternoon, but the recording is really handy to have. Yes, anyway, well, I think we might let you go then, unless anybody else has got another question.
I have a question that I've just
Oh,
thought
Joe,
of. Sorry about
hello. I'll just mute myself again.
So something that I've been thinking about across all of the AAC that we sort of support at CENMAC is that you can go so far with personalization with AI capability, but something that all AAC tends to miss is things like humor and nuance in speech. So I wondered if that was something that you'd considered in the development in terms of how you've talked about like personal location and maybe the various people that they speak to. Have you thought about AI being used as a component to learn like their sense of humor or when something is a joke?
That's a great question. I feel like it's still it's an ongoing problem. I feel like plenty of people don't get humor when it's in text sometimes in a normal
Yeah.
sense. And how can we expect our apps to do it? What is most exciting to me right now that we've been able to be part of just in the past few years, and that hasn't really kind of bubbled up to the surface yet of being a part of apps, is I think we're getting a lot more expressiveness now in voices.
Mhm.
In a year, whereas we're right now or a few years ago, we were very excited about like, hey, this doesn't sound like a robot anymore. We can do child voices, we can do accents. The things that have just happened in the past year or two, 11 Labs is probably one of the better versions, but I just saw some I believe they were associated with Google, who put out a press release yesterday about, again, being able to take expressiveness from text and putting that into voice in a way that simply wasn't possible, even we're talking like 3 or 4 years ago, and hasn't quite reached the level of like it's integrated with apps yet, though. But there is an exciting level that's happening, I think, at the speech synthesis level, that it will that of more understanding of, given this tone, what is the tone of the voice that's going to be coming out. And we've been able to help that by saying, like, by feeding it more information, by like being like, hey, here's the sentence that came before it, does that inform how this tone is going to be? And just do things like trying to get a question when we know it's a question, even though there's not a question mark. I think we're going to see here in the next couple years, as that stuff trickles down from being, right now it's exciting at the programming level and at the academic paper level, where that stuff is going to trickle down to the app level, I think, feel here in the next year or two. And we're going to see a lot more expressive voices based on text, where you're going to see a bit of more of that playfulness and humor. What we've also been experimenting with, that hasn't reached the public yet, is we've done some experiments and some testing of allowing users to set how they want the mood of their voice. It's just like, hey, are you having fun in this conversation? Is this whether that slider is from anger to playfulness, or from seriousness to more looseness, we now have the ability, you're going to see that ability pop up, of being able to set, like, hey, what mood do you want for your voice, and to at least partially take that for the text. But maybe the solution might be to actually have the user setting, like, hey, I'm in a good mood right now, so I want to be speaking in a good mood, versus I'm having a negative connotation. We've done some tests with that, of both like letting users pick, like, hey, I need to be reacting to the situation negatively or positively, and both influencing what gets predicted for them and the tone of their voice. So I think there's some fun stuff coming down the pipe. It's already better. I think you're going to see the real advancements of that stuff is going to be happening at the speech synthesis level, though.
Cool, fantastic. That's I'm glad I asked, because you sort of think about that as the next major change for fluency in AAC, is that ability to communicate tone properly. But I've always thought about it, how it will always be powered by AI. But then in the event that makes mistakes, if it's during the uptake version, if it's still learning, then that's going to cause all kinds of issues. In speech synthesis, which we've had for like years and years and years, I've read about a lot of people not taking to it, because while it does mimic the like intonation and the prosody of the voice, because it can't replicate tone, it sounds really, like you say, robotic, even though it is with their accent or even their like regional dialect or whatever. But yeah, I've always thought about it, if you're gonna have things that learn emotion in the voice, it would have to be something that the user puts forward themselves, rather than something that kind of like messes around until it gets it right, if that makes sense. So thank you for your answer.
Yeah, and I think that's the exciting, like, next direction for these things, of, whereas we talk about AI a lot, and obviously, yes, 2025, we're all sick of hearing about AI, but there are great things, and part of it is just allowing the actual user to steer things a little, like pushing it. There's prediction, but there's also just being like, hey, this is the direction in which we're going. Let's give things a nudge in the right direction. And I think there's going to be some give and take there that we're going to see. That's the most exciting part, is those things working together.
Cool. Sounds sounds amazing, really, if you could actually get expressiveness into, yeah.
Mhm.
Anyway, Right. Well, it doesn't sound like anybody else is has got any more questions, Michael. I don't think so. So we might.
Can I?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Can I?
Yes. Go
One
ahead.
more. Okay, so my student purchased like the lifetime, because I know you have it monthly and then there's the lifetime
Mhm.
one. So when she moves on to high school, can everything that we've like already worked on and programmed, can it just be transferred over to the next? As long as you just like log into the app again, it should be okay transferring to like the next iPad.
Yeah, I would make sure that so some of our things, because of privacy reasons, we're keeping at a device level.
Okay.
So it would be important to try and transfer those things from device to device would be the best way to do it, of those histories. So with, we have privacy considerations of like how much of that we're keeping on servers and how much of it is being kept on the user's device. But it's usually from iPad to iPad, as long as you've got sort of a continuation there, is we can transfer that data.
Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. Well,
Cool.
thank you for
Okay.
having me.
Well, thank you for coming.
Yes, and
Yeah, if anybody does have any questions for Michael, feel free to kind of email me, and I can put you in touch, or anyway, thanks for joining us this afternoon, and thank you, Michael, and yes, goodbye everybody.
thank you.
Bye.